I think it is. Um. Okay, that's different. That is very different. It's like a futuristic spaceship. Yesterday, Sony had their conference, the future of gaming, and in there they showed us quite a few games. They even unveiled the PlayStation 5. So if you missed it, don't worry about it. We'll touch up on a few of the key points here in this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Share this video with a buddy or two. It really helps us out. Also, I'll link above our last video where we went over some of the expectations and the wants and things like that. So make sure to check that out. So Sony asked us to wear headphones for this conference. I'm not really sure it made a difference. Then again, the thing was being streamed over 1080p 30 FPS. My mistake, because on the last video I kept saying 60 FPS. It was actually 30. So even less of a compression quality that we got through. I don't think the headphones really made a difference. Maybe it sounded louder in your ears because it was closer. Whatever the case is, it really didn't make a difference. Regardless, your games and your audio is going to look and sound a lot better when these next-gen consoles come out and you pair them with a 4K TV. So what were some of the expectations? We expected Sony to unveil maybe one or two first-party studio games and quite a few indie, and that's exactly what we got. We got quite a few indie titles, but it could have just been a backlog of games that Sony has been wanting to show us. We hadn't really seen Sony since 2018. They canceled PAX, they canceled E3 last year. They basically weren't going to show up to E3 this year until the whole pandemic happened and everyone pretty much went digital. So they did show us quite a few indie titles. Some look interesting, some more than others. Some I thought were for VR, but apparently not. Either way, we're more interested in some of the bigger names. So I had made a video about the PlayStation Magazine. It had leaked last month for this month, and in it there were 38 next-gen games. So we weren't sure if this conference that we saw was going to have or feature those 38 games. Those 38 games are coming out next generation. But regardless, that wasn't so much the case with this conference. We did see a couple of those games that were on the list. But nonetheless, let's talk about the bigger names that we saw on the conference. Let's start with GTA 5. This is the first thing that Sony decided to show us. Now, as soon as I saw that Rockstar logo, I was really hoping it would have been GTA 6. But instead, no, it was just GTA 5. This game has now survived 3 generations of consoles. It came out in the back end of 2 generations ago on the 360 and the PS3. Then, of course, they made a next-gen version, PS4 and Xbox One. And now, somehow, this game is still surviving into next generation 7, 8 years later. GTA 5, of course, is an amazing game. But now, 3 generations of the same game, I'm just ready for GTA 6. I would even take a Vice City remake. I would love that. So we also saw Spiderman Miles Morales. This one's more like a standalone DLC. It's more like an expansion pack to the Spider-Man PS4 game, but with Miles Morales. Now this one's a great idea from Sony because they now have a game at launch, or what would appear to be at launch. And that's a great idea on Sony's part because they now get to market the PS5 as if it's launching with a Spider-Man game, which is a big name for Sony. So maybe they add, even though this is probably going to be like an expansion pack or a standalone DLC, if they add enough filler and content to it, then they could call it a full-fledged game. It's most likely going to come out on the PS4 and the PS5. So either way, it's a great idea. We also got Gran Turismo 7. Now this one really isn't a surprise. The last couple of weeks we've gotten to see a logo, and then they came out and said, no, that's not our logo, and it turns out that it actually is. They also filed the trademark for the name last week on the same day that the original conference was supposed to happen. So seeing Gran Turismo 7 really isn't a surprise. We also got a new Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart. So they talked about how they were able to take advantage of the solid state drive that Sony has on the PlayStation 5. They were able to rift in between different levels, and it's all possible because the levels are being loaded in so fast that they couldn't do that before. I'm a fan of the Ratchet and Clank games, so I'm definitely going to check this one out when the time comes. We also got a new Resident Evil. So Resident Evil 2, the remake, and even Resident Evil 3 to an extent, these two set the benchmark for what Resident Evil games should be. And if this new Resident Evil game is not third person, if it's first person, then I don't know how a lot of these fans are going to feel about it. So if it's too different from the already successful formula, then they're going to have to do a lot of convincing to the more recent fans, including myself. So lately, Bluepoint has been doing a lot of remasters and remakes. They're sticking to that blueprint with Demon Souls. It's getting remade. You also now have Sackboy, a big time adventure. He's sort of like one of the mascots for PlayStation. He's the guy from Little Big Planet. Looks like they changed up the style a little bit, moving slightly away from the Little Big Planet style and making him into more of a platformer, sort of. So it doesn't look like there'll be too much puzzle solving, and hopefully you can still hop in co-op with a friend. But overall, it looks like they've made some major changes, and not necessarily for the worse. We also got Hitman 3, stealth game where, you guessed it, you're a hitman. The first two were major successful titles, so of course we're gonna get a sequel. There were a few other notable games, but none bigger, at least for me, than Horizon Zero Dawn sequel. So in the trailer, you can see that she's underwater with the mechanical crocodiles and all this other stuff. There were rumors about her being able to fly. We didn't really see that in the trailer, but that doesn't mean it's not in the game. I'm just sad that it's not a launch title. I would love to play this on day one. So we finally got to see what the console looks like. We got the form factor. Some of the renders that people were making were really wild and out there, but Sony saw those and said, hold my beer. This one is really out there. I'm not saying I don't like the design. I'm sure it'll grow on me, but it just wasn't what I was expecting. It has some curves and it's wavy. I'm a big fan of the white and black two-tone concept that they have. I know some people will prefer an all-black version, but I like the balance that they've struck. Something major that I wanted to see was the system cooling. And I still want to see this, but they didn't give that to us in the event yesterday. And honestly, I don't think Sony is really going to give us a teardown like Microsoft did with the Xbox Series X. I think instead we're just going to have to wait to get it in our hands and tear it apart. I don't think it still suffers from those overheating issues that we heard about, but those could have been just rumors. So it looks like the heat is going to dissipate from the top vents, similar to how the Series X will do the same, except these vents are a lot smaller. My biggest concern is that I do not want this thing to sound anything like the PS4 Pro. As long as it's nice and quiet, then I'll be very happy. So let's talk about the accessories. We already had the controller. I personally wanted some more information on the backwards compatibility, if the PS4 controller is going to be forward compatibility, or if we can use the new DualSense controller backwards compatible with the current gen PlayStation 4, but we didn't get any of that information. We did get a headset that looks pretty cool. It actually looks better than the Platinum model that PlayStation has now. We also got the PlayStation camera, but I didn't see any VR. So most likely we're probably going to get a VR announcement at a later date, or none at all. Not really sure on that one. So there were quite a few things that we wanted and we didn't really get from this conference. We wanted the price. How much is this thing going to cost? And then you also notice that they unveiled two versions, the versions with the disc and the version without. So what is the price difference between the two? We also wanted a release date. We didn't get that. We wanted to know about backwards compatibility. We didn't get that either. We wanted to know if they were supporting some type of smart delivery or the Sony version of smart delivery. We didn't get any of that information either. And I also wanted to know about the load times to see if they had something similar to what Xbox has, where you can switch in between games and it would load within 8 seconds. We didn't see that either. So if you want to rewatch the conference, you can go to Sony's PlayStation page on YouTube, and there they have it. You can watch it over again. So looking at these two, especially when compared to the Xbox, we don't know the exact same size, but this one looks to be a lot bigger. It looks like it's going to take up a lot of space in your entertainment center. Now, as far as the design, these two companies are taking complete opposite approaches. So you have Xbox with the Series X. It's a very simplistic, long cube. Looks like a mini ATI tower. Nothing fancy. I mean, maybe if you want to count the concave top of the fan where the heat comes out. When you look at it from an angle, there's a green mesh that makes it look like there's a nice color coming from the device. And now when you look at the Sony PS5, this is like way out there, very futuristic. Both of them are on very opposite ends of the spectrum. So as far as colors go, we already know that the PS5 has the two-tone colors. A lot of people would love to see a black color, and vice versa goes for the Series X. It comes in black, and a lot of people would like to see it in a white color. As for the unveiling, both of these companies have taken very different approaches. The Series X was unveiled 7 months ago during last year's Game Awards. Sony has been very quiet this entire year, and now, just a few months before launch, they decided to show us. And even still, we have some questions. Hopefully, Sony will answer those soon, and when they do, we'll make sure to cover it. Just so you guys know, we recently recorded a podcast. Now, it's our first attempt at a podcast, so we didn't do it live, but expect to see that video coming up soon. We're basically taking all the first party studios from both sides, Sony and Microsoft, and we're talking about what they have worked on, what they are currently working on, and even what they could be working on or future releases, things like that. It's very interesting, very engaging. So check that out, coming soon. We're going to do it in 2 separate parts, one for Sony, one for Xbox. Once again, if you like our content, make sure to hit that subscribe button below. Hit the like button if you like what you're seeing or listening to, whatever the case is.